All right, so this is all about clap your hands this morning. So I think our prayer for illumination, and yes, Harriet, this is a little bit just for you, but y'all are going to help with it. I think you'll know it. Here we go. If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. If you're happy and you know it, if you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. Amen again. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. All right, according to G.K. Chesterton, life is serious all the time, but living cannot be. He says, you may have all the solemnity you wish in your neckties, but in anything important, such as sex, death, and religion, you must have mirth or you will have madness. Well, I'm hoping to interject just a little bit of mirth in the message for today because our focus is big, big joy. Now, it's not that humor and laughter are the same as joy, but when our hearts are joyful, we do take ourselves less seriously. When our hearts are joyful, the laughter comes more easily. Today is the last in our sermon series on the Psalms. I hope you have enjoyed these weeks as much as I have. Through the preaching and through the music, we have explored the Psalms and the way they reflect a wide range of human emotion and the full scope of engagement between God and humanity. Deep lament and confession, individual and communal cries for protection or for unity, sacred moments of prayer and praise, all ultimately leading us to that bold truth that God is ever present. God is with us regardless of circumstance, and thanks be to God for that. Today we close out the series with this psalm of joyful thanksgiving, a reminder of praise, an example of what it looks like to praise and to worship God with clapping hands, with raised voices, with the sound of a trumpet. Yes, that's really coming in just a minute. I'm very excited. And with joyful hearts, with the kind of joy that is real and deep and contagious. Our ability to tap into that kind of joy is sometimes dependent on the image of God we carry with us. For some, it may be easy to worship God joyfully, even playfully. For others, we may have what one writer referred to as spiritual geliophobia. The Reverend Susan Sparks refers to herself as America's only female stand-up comedian with a pulpit. And she wrote a book called Laugh Your Way to Grace, Reclaiming the Spiritual Power of Humor. She's also an attorney. And Sparks tells a story about one of her law school professors. She says, once upon a time, there was a big, scary law school professor named Mad Dog Murphy. He lived in the stacks of Wake Forest University Library, eating unsuspecting first-year students for his mid-morning snack. Or so we all believed. Passed down from generation to generation, the stories of Mad Dog had become part of the very fabric of the first-year law school experience. He was legendary. So Sparks goes on to tell this story. She says, at 9 a.m., on my first day of a course in civil procedure, the door cracked open and in walked this lumbering white-haired giant. He laid his books on the podium and leered out at us with a detached stare. I'm sure you've heard all kinds of stories about me, he said. And then with his grin growing, and I must admit, they are all true. Well, no one laughed, right? No one smiled. No one was even breathing. So he looked around the room as if he was kind of expecting some kind of response, and getting none, he sighed. He put his bifocals on, and he looked down the roll. And she says it was like waiting for the executioner's call. And sure enough, my time on earth had ended. Miss Sparks, he calls out. I gulped and tried to stand up, a little difficult because I had lost all feeling in my legs. He said, "Please tell us what you know of subject matter jurisdiction." I had read the assignment 50 times, memorizing every word, yet as I stared at the book, I couldn't manage a sound. "Miss Sparks?" Silence. "Not to be rude, but how long do you think it might be before we are graced with your answer?" Still silence. "Well, perhaps the class would like to hear a joke while you're thinking." And she looked up in disbelief, and he told this joke, and just, I know there are a lot of attorneys here today, so just, this is not my joke, this is Mad Dog Murphy's joke. He said, "Does anyone know the difference between a dead snake in the road and a dead lawyer in the road?" Anybody know that one? The snake has skid marks in front of it. Yeah. Okay, so we can laugh about it, but of course no one in that classroom laughed. No one dared, they didn't want to call attention to themselves. So looking around the room, he says, "Miss Sparks, I believe what we have here is a clear-cut case of geliophobia. Perhaps for extra credit, you can define geliophobia." And of course she couldn't. "And so it means," he said, "the fear of laughing. Geliophobia is the fear of laughter." Well, Susan Sparks goes on in her book to suggest that if geliophobia is the fear of laughter, then spiritual geliophobia must be the fear of laughing in the presence of God. Now, we're all afraid of something. We all have preferences about what we like and what we don't like. But true phobias are debilitating and life-limiting. They're generally grounded in some experience of trauma, but can also be learned and reinforced in childhood. Phobias require great support and therapeutic intervention to manage the symptoms and live more fully, more freely. But what about a spiritual phobia? The truth is that many who claim the name Christian default to somber and serious ways of experiencing God. This is not a completely novel idea. French philosopher Voltaire said, "God is a comedian, playing to an audience who is afraid to laugh." Thank you for laughing. So what is our image of God? Do we experience God as a Mad Dog Murphy type of character? Someone who's lurking about, just waiting for us to mess up, just waiting to throw down a lightning bolt as punishment? Or do we experience God as Susan Sparks eventually learned to experience, her law school professor, once she really got to know him? She writes further about discovering him to be someone who did expect and hope for much from his students, but someone who was also kind and personal and funny, someone who loved to laugh. Do we experience God as inspiring the kind of joyful praise found in the 47th Psalm? Do we experience the presence of God in ways that make us want to clap our hands or stomp our feet? Do we love God so much that sometimes we just have to shout about it? Or give a feeble amen or something? There you go, thank you. Thank you, David. It's like my plant in the audience, yeah. Is our joy so abundant that clapping and shouting praises to the Lord and laughing are simply inevitable? We can't help ourselves. After all, as Michael Warren says every Friday night at the Way as he dons a funny hat and a rubber nose, we are not a glum lot.
No, we're not.
Thank you. No, we're not. Now, I'll be honest, after these weeks of focusing on the Psalms, and mostly the beautiful, but let's face it, angsty Psalms, right, of lament and confession, and then in our Tuesday Bible study, we spent time on the really difficult imprecatory Psalms, the ones where the psalmist gives words to the vengeance we want to inflict on our enemies, when we're really honest about it. Well, it seems almost jarring to shift gears so quickly to this full-on encounter with big, big joy. But it would be wrong to leave the Psalms without this emphasis on joy and praise and thanksgiving, because the true beauty of the Psalms is that they reflect every human emotion. They are real, honest, raw moments of crying out to God. And if those moments do not include joyful moments, then something is sadly missing from our lives. We talk a lot about the human condition in terms of despair and need, but the human condition also includes incredible moments of resilience, of hope, of absolute ridiculousness and joy. Big, big joy. At least it should. Back to our gathering words by Shauna Nequest. I want a life that sizzles and pops and makes me laugh out loud. And I want my everyday to make God's belly laugh. Glad that He gave life to someone who loves the gift. Do we love the gift of life that God has given us? If we do, then let's live our lives with joy and with love and with laughter. Now, lots of learned and faithful folks agree with this idea. And Lamott says that laughter is carbonated holiness. That's a great line. Reinhold Niebuhr said laughter is the beginning of prayer. E.E. Cummings said the most wasted day is one without laughter. A Yiddish proverb tells us, what soap is to the body, laughter is to the soul. And then we have these words of wisdom from Jack Handey. Before you criticize someone, you should walk a mile in their shoes. That way, when you criticize them, you're a mile away and you have their shoes. I'm not sure what that has to do with anything. I just thought it was funny. When our hearts are joyful, we take ourselves less seriously. When our hearts are joyful, then laughter comes more easily. And laughter is good for the soul. And laughter is healing, physically and emotionally. It's good for us to laugh. It's like scientifically proven, right? It's right. It's true. Here are 7 reasons why laughter is good for us, okay? Laughing lowers blood pressure. It reduces stress hormone levels. It's a fun little ab workout. It improves cardiac health. It boosts our immune system. It triggers the release of endorphins, and it produces a general sense of well-being. We need to be laughing more, right? And let's ground our laughter in big, big joy. In thanksgiving and praise for a God who created us and who loves us fully, completely, ridiculously. And thanks be to God for that. Amen. Amen.